flosstube, and welcome to another video. I am Ros Clark. This is Ros Clark Craft here on YouTube, and you can also find me as Ros Clark Craft on Instagram and on Etsy. Thank you so much. Thank you if you're a returning viewer. Thank you especially if you're a new subscriber. There have been quite a few of those since I last did a normal floss tube. We're now at over 600, which is very exciting for me. It feels like only a minute ago that we hit the 500 mark and did the 500 subscriber giveaway. So thank you if you subscribed recently. It's been really nice to have a few shout outs from lots of lovely people. I know Mama Loves GB, Michelle, has been doing a sort of focus on UK floss tubers, and she included me in that list. And I think a few of you may have come over from there. And shout outs from Somi Sarah and Flossie Sews and Grows and Stitchy Rach, and maybe one or two others as well that I've forgotten. So thank you if you've shouted me out, and thank you if you're new here. So yes, it has been a while. It's 2 months. It's almost 2 months since I did a normal floss tube. So I have been doing the weekly videos for the Celebration of Colour Stitch Along series. That finished just at the very end of March on Easter Sunday. I'm going to talk more about that later, but that was really, I was quite impressed with myself that I managed throughout January and February to sort of do some normal floss tubes as well. But by the time it got to March, it was really all I could do to keep up with that series. And then I don't really have an excuse for the first 2 weeks of April. I mean, I kind of do, and I'll do some live stuff at the end, but it's nothing bad. I, apart from anything else, have not been doing loads of stitching in February and March, so it's not felt like there's been a big pile of stuff sort of waiting to be talked about. I have got some stuff to talk about that I'm quite excited about. I've got some fully finishes, I've got some finishes, I've got a work in progress, I've got some very exciting plans, I've got a little bit of haul, which I rarely talk about haul on this channel, but I have got a little bit that came today that I want to show you because it relates to something else that I'm going to be doing. And I've got some big plans and ideas, maybe. We'll see. I would be interested to hear your feedback and see what you think. So I'm going to start with my fully finishes, and I'm going to show you this. So you've seen this finish before. This is the 2023 holiday countdown stitch along that was collaboration with Evertote, Roxy Floss and Modern Folk Embroidery. They are all the colours from the countdown, but not in the same places. There was one colour that I didn't use, the really dark, almost black, and I changed the words here because as I was stitching this, it reminded me of the Song of Songs, which is my thing. So I wanted to put a reference to that. All the birds and the twin deer and the fruits and the flowers and the love and the vine. And so then when I think it was Michelle, again from Mama Loves GB, who pointed out this chart that was coming out, this is With Love from Modern Folk Embroidery. You could also get this as a kit from Evertote with Roxy Floss Co, which I didn't because I worked out that I had just enough of the same fabric. So this is the Turtle Dove that came in the Holiday Countdown box, to do them both on the same piece of fabric. Now, here's a thing that's interesting that I sort of knew was true and hadn't really thought about until I came to fully finish this, which I'll talk about in a minute. In order to fit both on the same piece of fabric, I had to do them in different orientations. So if you can imagine, the piece of fabric was this way up, and it was quite a big piece for this. I think I had the 36 count, so there's plenty of room. And if I'd known I was going to stitch both of these, I would have had the fabric this way and done one piece and one piece next to it. But I didn't know. So I did one piece like this, and then I'm like, actually, I've just about got enough in this bottom bit here, but I had to do it this way round. And I had to know that I was going to do a finish that needed very small margins because I did not have big margins. And what that meant was, although these have exactly the same stitch count, they don't quite line up. Can you see the top edge of this is just higher than the top edge of that? And the bottom edge is actually also slightly lower than that. So this one is slightly longer and narrower, and this one is slightly wider and taller. And I was like, well, have I counted that stitch count wrong? Of course not. It's just because the weave is very slightly different. It's really hard when you're weaving, actually. I mean, maybe this is what even weave does differently from linen. Don't know. But anyway, it is really hard to get the warp and the weft precisely equal. So although this is 36 count, I think what you would find if you measured it very precisely is that, I don't know, let's say you get 36 stitches to an inch exactly on this side. On this side, it might be going in this direction. In this direction, you might get 36 and a half or 35 and a half or something like that. It's a very small amount. You'd still count it as 36, definitely, but it's just not quite the same. So these pieces weren't absolutely identical in size. Not enough difference to make a change. And what I've done, which is what I immediately planned to do when I knew I was going to do these two, this effectively is like a slip cover for a book. So I've faced both of them. So I interfaced both the front and the back. I always interface my stitching, almost always interface my stitching, just to hold it in place and give a bit more stability. And then I faced both of them with this fabric. I really love this. It's a modern toile de jouy print from a relatively local mill to me. And you haven't really got loads of it on this bit that I've cut. This is still quite a rural kind of scene, but parts of it have like the factory on it and that sort of thing. Anyway, so I've used that to make the inside, and I put a little tiny scrap of the leftover fabric in the middle to make the spine. And I've also put inside here, I don't know if I can get this to show you. I don't know if you can just about see that spotty bit. That is cut from an old file folder thing. It's kind of a thin plasticky, acrylic-y kind of thing to give some stability to this. So this feels quite sturdy. It doesn't, it's got a kind of heft to it. It's not heavy and it's not complicated, and it still has flexibility, but it's not sort of floppy in that way. Now, you could just do this and put a notebook inside, but what I am going to do, and I have ordered more of the fabric. You can't actually order this is turtle dove, but you can order speculoos, which is very, very similar. I've ordered more of that and some more of the colours. I've still got plenty left of most of these colours, but I've ordered more of the ones that I use quite a lot. And my plan is to make some pages inside the book, because as well as making the back cover Song of Song themed, the front cover is also Song of Song themed. This says, "I, my beloved's, and he is mine," in Hebrew. And I would really like to find more charts that I can either adapt or are already in some way Song of Songs themed, and stitch them in the same colour palette on the same kind of fabric and put them as pages, which I'll then stitch to the spine and make a cross-stitch book. So it's sort of fully finished. The cover is fully finished. The book is a finish for now. I've really enjoyed that finish. I'm excited about where it's going to go with the rest of the project. Obviously, that is now a long-term project. So that's the first fully finished. The other thing which I started, finished and fully finished since I last saw you, I really want to tell you about these. So this is Everyone Counts. And this is my contribution to the Stitches Collective Stitches for Peace charity fundraiser in aid of Médecins Sans Frontières. So Médecins Sans Frontières is an organisation that I've been involved in supporting for a number of years now. There used to be a very brilliant knitting and crochet based fundraiser for Médecins Sans Frontières. It was called Pennies Per Hour of Pleasure, PHOP, and the basic premise was that designers donated their patterns for free, and then you would make a donation in exchange for the pattern on an honesty box system, however much it was worth to you, for the pleasure you would get out of knitting it, and all the money would go to Médecins Sans Frontières. So Médecins Sans Frontières, if you're in the US, you probably know them as Doctors Without Borders, but it's the same organisation, and they work to take medical care into some of the most dangerous and difficult places in the world. Places where there is war, places where there are natural disasters, places where there are humanitarian crises of all kinds. And their work is ongoing and extraordinary. And obviously at the moment there are particular situations that many of us have on our mind, in Gaza and in Ukraine. And so I wanted to do a design that reflected that, but was also very customizable to any situation that is on your heart. And so you can see this one, I've used the colours for the Ukraine flag. This one I've used the colours and the, you know, sort of an approximation of the Palestinian flag. And there are instructions in the pattern for how you would do that customization. Everyone counts. Every number that you see in a headline is a person, and it doesn't matter what sort of person that is, how old they were, how young they are, what color their skin was, what religion they have, what country they're from, what their ethnicity is. Every one of those people matters. And so you could stitch this. These are sort of little patterns of just 4 in a star. Each one of those stars or each one of those stitches could represent a person, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever is appropriate for the situation you're talking about. But also you can obviously easily extend the design and keep counting, keep remembering and commemorating and honouring every one of those people who loses their lives or is hurt in some way. So it's a pattern that you can use to do whatever is on your heart, really. And it comes in a bundle. There are 21 charts in this bundle. A lot of them are much more optimistic and beautiful and pretty and hopeful than mine. And mine is a bit kind of let's count the dead. It's very yeah, it is a little bit grim in some ways, but it's what seemed important to me. But like I say, there's a whole range of designs. I'll put some images up here so you can see the sort of things. And you can get all 21 charts for a minimum donation of $10, 10 American dollars, to Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. I think that is until the end of the month. We are, as I'm recording this, almost at $5,000. I would love it if we got to $10,000 within the course of the month. So if you've not already seen it, do go and check out. I have obviously all the links below for where you can see all the patterns, where you can make a donation. You know, whoever you are, whatever you're concerned about, if you care about people, people's lives, if you think people matter, this is a great way of supporting that and helping some of the people in the world who most need it. Yeah, so anyway, that's Everyone Counts. Everyone Counts. And that, okay, I have 2 more fully finished objects. I mean, I'm counting these as fully finished. This is a new thing that I've done. I've taken a notebook. I've just added these stickers at the bottom that call it Cross Stitch Journal and called it good. And I'm just doing little bits of collaging, sort of journaling things. So this is medieval manger that I stitched a year ago. This was my first model, and I decided I needed to stitch it again using 2 strands instead of 1 strand. But I finished this whole first one, so I'm like, well, I want to keep it and put it somewhere. So I have collaged it with these nativity characters, and I found one on the picture. There was a picture of Jesus here as well. So I've kept the Mary and Joseph, and then I've stuck my baby Jesus over the top. Everyone Counts, I've shown you that. This is a little mini. I was sort of doing some experimenting with circular designs, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go anywhere with that, but so I thought, well, actually, I'm just going to put it in here. This is something, this used to be in a hoop frame, actually, and I don't have it on the wall anymore. I have other things in that frame, and I'm not sure I'm going to put it on the wall again, so actually, I just collaged it into the book. If you watch Michelle Bendy Stitchy, you know, she does this sort of journaling with a lot of cross stitch smalls and other people as well. Stitching by the Shore, Laura, she does sort of cross stitch scrapbooking, which is quite fun as well. She puts hers into sort of scrapbook wallets with some background. So I also forgot, I got these little cards that I'd made as part of my first Christmas collection. So we've got the small stable and the small Bethlehem. So also a good way if people send you cross-stitch cards of keeping them somewhere safe to do. And super easy. Mostly I've just used PVA glue and, you know, bits of trim. This has got a little bit of chenille around it in colours that I wasn't sure I was going to use anywhere else. This is mostly washi tape on a background. the book is not super high quality, and that's why you can see some of the gluing leaves the pages a bit wonky. I might cover some of that up, I might not. It's, you know, it's just a way of having stuff that's better than in the box under the bed, isn't it? You know, I can put this on a bookshelf and then it's always there, and you know, I can look at it, other people can look at it, I can remember the stitching and why I did it. Some of these I put little notes on, what the pattern name is, when I stitched it and why. Some of them I haven't, because I don't need to remember that sort of information on everything, but you could use it for record keeping as well. So anyway, that's my cross stitch journal. So this is obviously the thing that's been mostly taking my attention this year, and I have 2 finishes. I can't remember whether I finished this at the end of 2023 or the beginning of 24, but I've only just done the fully finishing on it. So this is the original Celebration of Colour stitch along that was my model stitch. There are some things in the pattern as it came out that have been altered from this. Also, on the chart it's this way up, and it was only after I'd finished it that I realised I'd used it the other way up on here. I think it's fine either way. So I made this one into a pouch. It has got a zippered top, a zip top. I don't know when we started calling zips zippers. It's got quite a stiff thing. It's got the thing in it, soft and stable maybe, that I would use anyway when I'm making project bags. So it's quite sturdy. It stands up quite nicely. I found this fabric. I've got a summer tunic made out of this that I really like, but I thought it was appropriately colourful to go with this on the front. And because I knew I wanted to make a box bottom pouch, I made sure I left quite a border around this so we don't lose sight of anything. And I also just added, this is just machine stitched, a little line of quilting just to make the stitched part clearly the focus. I'm using mine to keep my spools of Soie 103 and Soie Sophine in there. They needed somewhere to keep them safe. My pouch stitching is not impeccable. I always forget to use a tutorial, and I really should. It's perfectly functional, but it's not like I wouldn't try and sell this to anyone. But as a fully finished thing, I think it's a nice way of using up this piece. But I also did a version in a different colour palette, and I finished that one like this. Now I'm going to just take this apart briefly so you can see what it actually is, which is a little needle book. So all I did was, all these pins are going to be placed. Anyway, I lined it with this fabric. It's a little bit thicker probably than would be ideal, but anyway, it's fine. And took a couple of pieces of tweed. You could also use felt, or you know, something that's not going to fray. Flannel would be nice. Use pinking shears on it. Stitch a line down the middle. Job's a good one. And I am using this to display the beautiful counting pins that the lovely Rachel of Stitchy Rage gave me as a sort of thank you for the stitch along. And so these are in her colour palette, which is not quite the same as this, but it works pretty well together, I think. So that's my little needle book, which I'm using, as I say, to store the counting pins, and makes a very beautiful decorative thing. I don't know what to call it, decorative thing. There we go. And I have it beautifully on display with other stitching-y themed things. I think the Celebration of Colour piece, you know, I knew it wasn't going to be something that everyone was going to be like, that's so beautiful, I have to have it on my wall. I mean, you might have it on your wall, but I wanted to do some finishing ideas that would show people, you know, ways of having it and valuing it and using it that weren't framing it and putting it on their wall, because not everyone wants this on their wall. I think if you've got a craft room or sewing space, something like that, it would be a really lovely thing to have on your wall in there as sort of colour inspiration and information, but probably not in your sitting room. I would have it in my sitting room. Anyway, so that's my little needlebook finish. So that's 4 fully finished objects. One of them is fully finished for now, but I'm going to count it. So that's pretty good. The only other thing I think I've stitched on since January, I mean, that feels like it can't be right, but it might well be. I mean, I did the With Love, that's all this year, and the second one of those Celebration of Colours is all this year, and the Count Me In, Everyone Counts, is all this year. So maybe that is it. I don't know. Anyway, this is the other thing that I have been working on. And this is going to be Tiny Modernist Spring Wreath. And it's just so cute and pretty. That little gnome, the little mushroom, toadstooly thing, the butterfly. And so it's going to go round the whole circle. And it probably won't be finished in spring, but that's all right. It's a very sweet stitch to do. I can't remember what fabric I'm doing it on. Might be lamb's wool, maybe, so I got lamb's wool. 32 count, I think it looks like. Something like that. And a range of my own colours. I do have a whole video actually in the Celebration of Colour series, maybe number 10 or 11, something like that, where I go through the process of choosing colours. Actually not the colours that I'm using, because I'd already started it by then. I go through the process, I choose a different colour palette, compare it with this, compare it with the one in the original, and just talk about the kind of things you would want to consider when you're doing that process. So if you're interested, you could go and check that out. So like I say, I think that is all of the stitching that I have to show you. It's not huge. As of 2 weeks ago, I am on sabbatical. I have 3 months, starting from 1st of April, ending on 1st of July, paid leave. I do have stuff I have to do during that time. Primarily, I have to write a book. But the first 2 weeks, I decided I was not going to work on the book. I was going to take, well, I was going to take it as holiday, and I've ended up mostly doing decluttering and housework, which doesn't sound as holiday-ish as one would like. But it's been quite nice. I mean, it's nice to have a decluttered house. I took a whole carload to the charity shop, a whole carload to the tip. I've had some quite full bins for regular collection. And given the size of my house, that makes pretty substantial difference. Yeah. So I'm glad I've done it. I was really panicking at the beginning of the sabbatical. I'm like, it's only 3 months. It's just going to go before I know it. I won't have done anything. I must do things. I must do things. Even though I'm not doing the book this week, I'm not working this week. I must do things. I must do things. So anyway, I've done a lot of decluttering, and I've got the washing machine on at the moment. I don't know whether you can hear it or not, but it is really the very last things in the house that have not been washed in the last 2 weeks, which is to say Charlie's manky blankets. Charlie is my dog. There is one manky blanket that he is currently sitting on, and then when this lot come out of the wash, a couple of them are fleecy blankets which will dry really quickly, so then he can have one of those and I'll put the last one in. So I've literally washed everything. I've almost finished all of the washing up, and again, that's everything I own pretty much will have been washed up in the last few days. My wardrobe is clear and sorted out. I've been through my bookshelves, and I have been through all my craft things, which is good, and freed up some space, which is really good. And it's made me start thinking, not just in the next 3 months, what I want to do, but more generally where I want the sort of direction of my craft life to be going. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Before I get to that, actually, I wanted to just show you this, which came in haul today. So this is called a stitch book. I bought this on Etsy, and I will put the link below to where you find it. And I plan to use it a little bit like the cross stitch journal, except that instead of sticking into a book, you're adding things onto a fabric background. And I was like, oh, I could just make one of those. I'm like, yes, just buy it. You haven't made one and you're going to faff around. Just buy one. And actually, the shop that I bought it from, you can buy them like this, obviously ready-made. She also has some that are in a cotton. These is linen. I wouldn't try and cross-stitch onto it, but you possibly could. I'll tell you in a minute why I don't think I will try. But anyway, linen, you can get some in cotton. She also has some in felt that are quite fun. Some in sort of white felt or natural felt colours, but also some in rainbow colours. I might need to get a rainbow one, obviously. And the thing that's lovely about this is the way she's arranged the pages. So they're sort of, you know, they've got eyelets and they're on the book rings. And then each one opens out So you can stitch on one side, have a back as messy as you like, and then fold the page in half so the back doesn't show. I think that's genius. And what I would like to do is use this effectively as another cross-stitch journal. And again, they're quite small, so it would be for smalls rather than for bigger pieces. I will probably do it so that this is the back, and then I can put them together like this and not have the bit where it says stitch book showing on the cover. But I sort of love this. So obviously you can stitch your cross stitch smalls onto it. You can use trims of all sorts of kinds. I think I've talked about this before. I don't love using glue. There's quite a lot of glue in the cross stitch journal book, but this I think you could do without glue. You could, you know, stitch on pieces of ribbon or trim. You could do it by hand or by machine. You don't have to worry, like I say, about the back. And then, you know, end up with a really nice sort of finished piece. The reason why I wouldn't try cross stitching is because the front and the back, it's actually a folded piece of fabric. So you would have to be trying to stitch. Do you see the sort of page opens up like this? So you would have to be stitching through 2 layers at once. And I think that will be quite hard work for cross stitching. I might try it, but it's not really the sort of fabric that you could stitch on it, but it would be non-ideal, I think. So like you might want to just put like a little bit with, I don't know, a name or a label or something like that you stitch directly into it. But I think in general it would be better to attach stitched pieces to rather than to stitch onto directly. But if you make your own, of course there's no reason why you shouldn't use you know, linen or Ada or whatever that you cross stitch onto. And actually she also sells in the shop a sewing pattern for how to make these yourself. And I think, having looked at it, I mean, I thought I could do this before I bought it, but definitely now having looked at it, I could definitely make these. And so what you could do is take a stitched piece that you have pre-thought about, so it's going to be the right size and on the right size piece of fabric, and then make a page for the book out of that. So, you know, you take your piece of linen that's going to be the sort of full length of a page, front and back, and do stitching. And you could do 2 entirely separate. You could throw it on the floor. You could do, you know, 2 entirely separate designs on the front or the back, or you could do something that's continuous, and then cut it out and make that piece into your page. And then your inside of your stitching is on the inside, back of your stitching is on the inside. I think there's all sorts of possibilities for making stitch books like that. So I wanted to show you the one that I'd bought in case that's something that you would be interested in working into as well. Obviously it doesn't have to be cross stitch. You could do all kinds of other textile or non-textile things and use them in a fabric book like this. Anyway, here's the thing that I want to tell you I've been thinking about. I haven't been thinking about it for very long. It's a kind of new idea and maybe a foolish idea, and so I'm not going to make any promises right here and now that I'm definitely doing this, but I think I probably am, and I want to know what you think. I am thinking about setting up a Patreon, and I want to explain why and then talk about what it might involve. And I'd love your feedback. I'd love to know whether you think it's something you would be interested in, whether it's something you can imagine other people might be interested in, even if it's not you, whether there are any sort of deal breakers, or ideas that you have, or things that you'd love to see, and so on. I'm thinking about setting up a Patreon. I know, that's a thing like proper cross-stitch designers do, isn't it? I mean, you know, and people with like big YouTube channels, neither of which is really me. And I'm not thinking about setting up because I suddenly want to, you know, become a multi-million-pound business. It's not really about the money, although there will be some pay levels, and there is a little bit that is about it would be nice to have some money to be able to do some other things to support the channel. But that's not the primary reason. I think the main reason is, so my channel is called Ros Clark Craft, and the intention always was that it was going to be a channel about craft in general. And if you look back at some of my early episodes, there's a couple of unboxings right at the beginning, but then there's a whole stream of episodes called Craft Tube. And that's really what I wanted to do, I think, was have a place where I would talk about all of the different creative activities that I do. And you know, there's episodes where there's knitting and there's crochet and there's dressmaking and there's painting and there's collage and there's, you know, just a whole wide range of things. And then I sort of relaunched in the way that all the advice is, don't do it, because I didn't change the channel name and I didn't start again and I didn't do any of that. I just sort of carried on because I'm like, I'm not really here for the numbers. It doesn't matter. If people want to watch it, they'll find it. But it did sort of become much more of a dedicated floss tube 2 or 3 years ago. And that's been nice. And I've done a lot more cross stitch in that time. I've talked about this before, my hand issues, which have meant that I haven't been doing really knitting and crochet at all for the last couple of years. And then there's other kind of crafts that sort of come and go in phases, like dressmaking. I went through a huge phase of dressmaking in 2020. For reasons, and that's continued a bit, but I don't do it a lot. I talked a little bit about quilting on here. I've shared with you sometimes things that I've done in my art class, but a lot of it has really been focused on cross stitch. And you know, that's what I guess you're here for. If you watch probably these days, you're here for the floss tube, you're here for the cross stitch, and that's great. And that isn't going to change really. You know, I think this channel will always be a floss tube channel from now on, probably. I mean, who knows, famous last words, but I think it probably will be. And increasing numbers of floss tubes are including other craft content at the end. So, you know, within the last year or so, a lot of floss tubers have suddenly got into knitting or crochet. And what they will often do is talk about their cross stitch, and then there'll be a little bit at the end where they talk about another craft. That's fine. For some people that's quilting, some people it's diamond painting, whatever. I don't always watch those bits. I'm not very interested in diamond painting, but I quite often do because I find I like to watch people. And if it's a person I like, then I'll watch them sort of whatever they're doing. I mean, I might not watch them if what they're doing is suddenly Formula One racing, but you know, if they're doing something creative and crafty, I probably will watch them. A lot of the floss tubers I watch, I think I've mentioned this before, don't stitch the kind of things that I stitch. And it's not, that's fine by me. I know some people really like to watch people who are stitching in the same kind of genre as them, and that's great. But I have, you know, I used to have this as my, when I was on Twitter, when it was still Twitter, for a long time, I think my bio was Jack of all trades, master of none, or Jack of all crafts, master of none. I like learning new things. I like trying lots of things. I get bored easily. You know, I'm kind of impressed with myself, the amount of cross stitch I've done fairly monogamously over the last 2 or 3 years, by which I mean not doing lots of other crafts, not so much the sticking to one cross stitch piece, although I don't like to have loads of those. So I've been thinking for a while, I'd like a way of sort of branching out, showing more different kind of creative things that I do. But I'm not sure that just doing that on my YouTube channel is the way that I want to do it. I want to be able to share printable resources, for example. I do a lot of collage and I'm like, oh, I'd love to be able to share things that people could print out that would become collage materials. Or I'd love to share tutorials that are blog posts rather than necessarily a video tutorial always. Or I'd like to be able to share you know, sort of long form videos, just, you know, craft with me, all sorts of things that I've just been like, you know, or a zine that you could download and print out and colour in, or all sorts of things. And I'm just like, I just don't know that YouTube lets me do all of that very easily. And I have been using Linktree and Google Drive as a place to put things, you know, like free charts that you can download, but it's not really a community kind of space. You just get to link to it from somewhere else. And I like the idea of a little community. I like the idea of sharing ideas and doing fun things. And that's one of the things I really, really enjoyed about doing the Celebration of Colour stitch along, was it just felt a little bit like a community. I mean, it wasn't really, but it was, you know, people would be talking about it and sharing about it, and people would be getting in touch saying, you've made a mistake on this chart, and seeing everybody's work was really motivating, and everybody's different palette, and it was quite a lot of work, like I say, particularly doing the videos. The chart as well, I found it harder than I was expecting to do a chart in that way, sort of building up section by section, and that's partly why there were so many mistakes. But I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and it was really fun to do with other people in that way. It was frustrating. One of the frustrations I had week by week doing those videos was trying to talk about colour and then not having a good enough camera lighting set up to actually show you what I meant all of the time. You know, and I could see these things here, and I'd look at it on the screen and I'd be like, I just don't know if you can see what I can see, and are you just going to have to take me on trust about this? So yeah, all of those sorts of things have been swirling around in my mind. I'd like to do more different things. I'd like to have more community. I'd like to have a better filming setup. Yeah, and I think I've been so encouraged and pleased and thrilled so many times when people have mentioned me in their floss tubes very kindly. They've talked about me as being someone who's really creative, and that's quite a hard label to own, isn't it? For someone who at school was really good at maths and science, it's really hard to say, I'm Ros and I'm a creative person. I've been going to my art class that I do for, I think it's 7 years now, which is extraordinary to me. But it must be because I've been doing my job for 7 years, and I definitely maybe it's 8 years I've been going to art class, in fact. Yeah, I think it must be. And it has been a real rehabilitation of my creative side and growing in confidence in lots of ways. And as a result, at one point I enrolled for an online degree in textiles. I did the foundation course and I did the first module, and then halfway through the second module I ended up in hospital with higher blood pressure than anyone I've ever known, at which point I began to think, you know, I don't need to do a degree as a hobby, it's fine. But you know, that was really the motivation, was that art class, to start thinking of myself as, I mean, I still keep using the words a creative person rather than an artist, because an artist is a really scary thing to be. But I am, and I love doing that. And I'm not saying I'm the most talented person in the world. I don't sell my stuff. I find it incredibly stressful to do things ever for other people. But I love the things I do. Like I say, I love trying new things all the time, which is one reason why I'm never going to be an artist, because I don't have the perseverance to just do one thing and get really, really, really good at it. I like doing lots of things and being quite good at some of them and not very good at others. It's fine, suits me. But I love to share some of that with you, and maybe help some of you start to feel more confident in calling yourself a creative person, even if you never get, you know, might never get to the stage of an artist, because that's really scary. We can just be creative people together in my craft community. So that's what I'm thinking I will do. And where I've got to, I'm sort of got in my mind, maybe I'll aim to launch this at the beginning of May, because there's a weird thing with Patreon where you pay at the beginning of each calendar month, and so you get then the rest of that calendar month. So if you join on like the 29th of the month, you only get 2 days worth for your money. But if you join on the 1st of the month, you get the whole month for the same money. So if I launch it at the beginning of May, then you can join at the beginning and get a whole month's worth and see what you think, rather than just getting 2 days worth before you have to repay. And my plan is there will be a lot of free content, and you can sign up. You join someone's Patreon as a free member, and you will get access to free content. And those will be mostly blog posts. There might be occasional videos and downloads as well. There might be some little tiny cross-stitch charts that I do, the kind of thing that I put quite often as a freebie to download from my Linktree. I would like to just be able to offer those as freebies to Patreon members at that free level. There'll be a very low level, which at the moment I think I've set at £1 a month. So that's really just a, you know, a nod to say, I think you're great, here's £1. And there will be slightly more available at that level. There won't be a whole lot of difference between the free and the £1 level, but there will be a handful of extra things in terms of blog posts and content and free downloads. The real change will come at the middle level, no, the third level. So there's free, there's £1. I think these are going to be named by colours. So the £1 level is yellow, the middle level is cyan, and at the cyan level, which I haven't quite worked out the pricing on this, but it won't be much. It'll certainly be less than £5 a month. I haven't quite worked out exactly how much it will be. And at that level, you will have access to all my cross-stitch smalls charts. So all the ones that currently exist in my Etsy shop will be on the Patreon, and if you're at that level, you'll be able to download any of them. You will also get, I think, this is sort of where I'm at with it, but, you know, none of this is, you know, carved in stone. The whole idea may not come to anything, but if it does, at that sort of level, I'm thinking what you would probably get is either a cross-stitch small chart or a bonus video every month. So there'll be one of those alternating. 1 month you get a chart, 1 month you get a video. And the video could be all kinds of things. It could be background to something that I'm designing. It could be, and it won't be colour theory, but it could be that sort of art theory kind of video. It could be all sorts of things. It could be, here's a different craft that I'm doing, do you want to craft along with me sort of video. So it won't necessarily be cross stitch related, the video, but it might be. And then there will also be some downloadable things that could be tutorials or zines or collage resources. And there'll be, oh, this is one of the things that is going to come in the earlier tier as well, certainly in the yellow tier and maybe in the freebie tier, is sort of posts full of inspiration and ideas. Because I have loads of ideas for stuff that I just am never going to have time to do. But actually, I would have time to write up a post saying, you know, here's a thing I'm doing and here's 5 other ways I've thought about it that you could do it. Or, you know, I went for a walk this morning, took this photo, here's 10 things that it made me think you could do. So those sorts of inspiration posts I think will be available, maybe some of them at the free tier, some of them at the yellow tier, that sort of thing at quite a low level tier, but you'll certainly have. So at Cyan, the main extra thing you'll get will be a chart or a video and some downloadable resources. It'll be a slightly different package every month, but there will be some things every month, but it won't always be exactly the same sort of things. And then at the magenta level, because obviously magenta is the best, so that's going to be the most expensive level, but even that, it won't be more than £10 a month. You will have access to all of my cross-stitch charts available to download, so the big ones as well as the small ones. You will get a cross-stitch chart every month. 1 month it will be the small chart, which the Cyan level get, and the other month you'll get probably a larger chart. I'm not going to make guarantees about exactly how big, but I've got quite a number of larger charts that are sort of lined up that I think will go in that magenta tier. So there'll be a chart every month, and also a video, well, at least every other month. No, I think you'd always, because you'd always get the Cyan video as well, and then you would also get your own. But so there might be all kinds of videos like I'm talking about. I'm thinking probably maybe 3 times a year, 3 or 4 times a year. The magenta level exclusive video would be a Zoom hangout. So we'd actually get to chat. And it might be a let's craft along during Zoom. It might be just bring your stitching and we'll chat. It might be a Q&A with Roz. So you'd get to send questions in beforehand and I'd chat through them in the Zoom, but you could, you know, come back on them, or that sort of thing. So that would be quite fun. That would be the sort of live interactive bit. And I mean, I cannot imagine getting to the number of patrons where I would need to do this, but there might be a point at which I need to limit how many people could sign up for that tier, because, you know, it's all very well saying come to a Zoom hangout, but if there's 100 people there, you don't really get to talk to me. So that would need to be a more limited number of people at that level. So that's what I'm thinking. Was there something else I was going to say about that and what I was thinking about with those? Oh yes, stitch alongs. Thank you. Good. So what I was thinking was, if I was to do a stitch along again, which I think I am, I've got an idea in mind that I think, again, is a little bit different from what's out there. It's not just a straightforward, you know, stitch a pretty picture in sections, stitch along. It probably won't be until 2025, because it's quite a commitment, a stitch along. But it would be something that would be done through the Patreon, I think, if I were to do that again. Probably after the end of the stitch along, as I'm going to with the celebration of colour, it will be something that I would make up into a chart that would be available for sale. But if you wanted to do it through the stitch along and have access to the bonus video content, which certainly the idea I've got in mind, there would definitely be a supporting video series. It might not be every week like with this one, but there would certainly be a video series to go with it. They would be available through the Patreon. And possibly, and you know, this is very, very pie in the sky thinking, the idea that I have in mind, it might well be that I do two slightly different versions for the cyan level and the magenta level. So everybody would join in and everybody produce the same kind of project, but there would just be more options and more variation, and potentially a bigger thing at the end at the magenta level, maybe. So that's, yeah, that is, I think, what I've got in my mind so far. It would be videos, it would be charts, but it would also be stitch alongs, Q&As, Zoom stuff, and it would go beyond cross stitch in a whole range of different directions. And some of the things, I'm going to put this in the sort of introduction post, some of the things that I'm thinking about in, you know, coming up in future sort of craft projects I want to do. One of them is based on this. It is not a pig-based project, although I do love this scarf. This is a scarf that I bought in the local charity shop when I was taking a whole carload of stuff. This is the one thing I let myself buy to come back with. And I plan to use this as the base for a Kawandi quilt, which is a hand-stitched quilt, a little bit like a Cantha quilt, from a part of Western India and a community which is of African heritage that settled in India, and it's how they make their quilts. And I think I have been gathering material to do this. It's not a complicated thing, you know. That's the sort of thing I'd love to do it. I'd love to maybe do a video about it, maybe some blog posts about it, sharing progress, encouraging you to join along with me or just watch. So that's something that I think would be coming up relatively soon. I want to start a new collaging project that's, you know, God, I love collage so much. And it's super easy and super low bar entry. You've got a pair of scissors and a glue stick and a magazine, you can do collage. So that's likely to be coming up. What else have I got in mind? Oh, the quilts that I'm working on, like one of those I absolutely want to have finished by the end of my sabbatical. So we might talk about that. We're going to be doing in my art class coming up this term. Well, I don't know what else we're going to do, but one thing we're going to be doing is working on a papier-mâché something. So we might talk about some of that in the Patreon. Yeah, there'll be opportunity to see a little bit more of my house and my life. I was talking to my art class yesterday about what they enjoyed on Patreon things. They're just like, I just really like it when there's bonus dog content. I don't know if that is going to be a feature on my channel, but it could be. I have the wherewithal to do bonus dog content. So who knows? There might be a Charlie access tier on the Patreon. I don't think there will be. Yeah, so I'd love to know what you think. Do you support any Patreons? Are you subscribed patrons to any of them? What is it that you love about them? What attracts you to them? What puts you off? Would you be, you do not have to commit at this point, interested in the kind of thing that I'm talking about offering? If not, what might make you change your mind? If yes, what is it that you'd love to see from me? Yeah, I'd just love to know all your thoughts, all your thoughts about Patreon. Now, if you have stuck with me this long, I have forgotten, but I do have one other thing that I want to talk about because, ta-da, I've been talking too long. My tea is now quite cold. I'm going to be 50 this year. And in fact, I'm going to be 50 this week. I mean, it does seem like 1974 was a great year, doesn't it? You've got Caroline at Evertote, Flossie Sews and Grows Sally, and Sarah from Sew Me Sarah doing their Fun for 50 sale. Sew Me Sherry, Sherry of Just So Sherry was 50, I think, last month maybe. Anyway, I'm going to be 50 this week, and I was thinking about, do I want to do a giveaway or do I want to do something special? I feel like there's enough opportunity to join in stitching things for people's 50th birthdays that I really don't want to do one of those. And then I thought, well, I've been doing all this huge decluttering around my house, and one of the things I've got a lot of that I really don't need is needle minders. So I stitch in hand, like always. So I have one needle minder that sits, I have like a little metal table that the phone is currently attached to for filming, so I can't show you. And I generally have one needle minder on there, and that's where I keep my needles while I'm stitching. I have one or two others sort of in travel project bags that's quite helpful to have, sort of replacing that one that I would have on the table when I'm at a retreat. But then I have a lot that I just have no use for. So what I think I'm going to do, so this is part of the collection. So you can see there's this one and this one and this one that are caterpillar cross stitch ones. This is a Kate Blandford one. I probably won't get rid of this one because somebody sent me that and it's got my initial on. This is a Roxy Flossco one with, that's Roxy, I believe, the bird. These have got beautiful flowery fabric on. This one is incredibly strong. I can't remember where on earth I got that. It might have been at Stitch in London, someone was handing out. I just don't know. Incredibly strong magnets. These Miffy ones, I love these. These are fridge magnets rather than stitch needle minders. But I've got some super strong magnets that I'm going to attach to the back, and then I think they will make needle minders. Aren't they sweet? I might need to keep some of those. I've got 4, not just these 2 here. There are more inside this tin as well. So what I'm going to do for my 50th birthday giveaway is I'm going to give away needle minders. If you would like to be in with a chance of winning a random needle minder from my collection, they will all be in excellent condition. They will all be strong, good quality needle minders. And I'm happy to send them anywhere because I'm only going to send anyone one, so they won't be heavy and they won't be big. Then what you need to do is just leave a comment saying happy birthday. If you use the word birthday, then I will put you in the list for needle minders. I'm not sure exactly how many I've got to give away, but maybe 15 or 20, something like that. So, don't think, oh, 3 people have put happy birthday, there's no point me leaving a comment. There definitely is. I have more needle minders than I normally get comments, shall we say. And I think that would be a fun way of celebrating my birthday with you all. So leave me all your thoughts about Patreons in general and my Patreon idea in particular. And if you want to wish me a happy birthday, you might win a needle minder. Thank you for watching. It has been quite long. Hopefully I will be back in a couple of weeks, and I will see you then.